And welcome back to me channel. Or if you're just new here, just welcome. My name is Rusty, and this is me channel where I talk about my favorite movies, mostly horror, and my favorite music, mostly metal. And let's continue our journey through the wasteland with 2013's Bounty Killer. I love this movie. Love this movie. Now, like I said, Bounty Killer was released in 2013. It was directed by Henry Saine, written by Jason Dodson, and it stars Matthew Marsden, Kristanna Loken, and Christian Pitre. Now, whichever side of the fence you fall on, you got a hero. Mary Death is so cool. And Drifter, Matthew Marsden, man. So whichever side you fall on, you got your baby in this movie. Because them two are pristine visions of female and male. Let me tell you, they're both, just because I'm gay can't tell you that somebody's pretty or not. And Mary Death is absolutely cool as fuck. She's a gorgeous lady. And Matthew Marsden is just pristine Roman statue, like pretty. So, yeah. Now, Bounty Killer, as I said, was released in 2013. The movie opens up with an intro. We see Mary Death, and we are introduced to Drifter immediately. They are both showing up at a high-rise apartment in a condo on an assassination mission. They are both there basically to kill the same guy. They meet each other in the elevator. You can tell they know each other. Oh, you're here. Oh, yeah, you're here. Well, let's see who gets who, And so they're obviously in competition, which we'll find out a little bit later. And they end up having an absolute, that was like kick-ass. I'm talking, this movie really reminds me of like a Quentin Tarantino movie. I mean, the type of action. Like if you took Quentin Tarantino and he mated with Guy Ritchie and they had a little baby, it would be this kind of movie, So we have the absolutely stunning over-the-top action sequence where they kill this guy and several other executives. And that's when we are introduced to the movie. The intro credits roll after this scene. And you are introduced to the backstory of this wasteland. Earth is now a wasteland after all the corporations got so much control that they began to fight each other, take everything, sort of like what's going on, if you really want to know. It's sort of like a snapshot of what things will be 25 years from now if people don't stop and go vote for the right people. So these corporations have taken over to the point where there was finally a revolution. The corporations attacked each other until they basically turned the earth into a wasteland. The people rose up and formed the Council of Nine. Now, the Council of Nine was formed for the people to try to rebuild the world. And all of these executives, corporate executives, and corporations themselves were charged with the destruction of the earth. This led to the rise of what is known as the bounty killers. They basically put bounties out on these executives' heads for crimes against humanity. And you basically have a cultural, like death race or something, it's like on TV. Everybody knows about it. And certain assassins, certain bounty killers have become stars. Drifter is a star. Mary Death is a star. Everybody, she's the badass, he's the badass. These are the two best bounty killers. So we are introduced to that. We see them arrive at the cash out, which gives us more world building into this movie. They arrive at a cash out location. That's where you bring the dead bodies to retrieve the bounty after you've killed them. That's hilarious stuff going on. We're introduced to Jack. Jack is a fanboy of Drifter, and he wants to be his gun caddy. And he keeps on pestering him until finally he does allow him to become his gun caddy. He's not Jack Black, but he reminds me of a character that Jack Black would play. Because he's absolutely crazy. Now, while he's there, Drifter finds out that a person that he knew, named Harry, has a bounty out for him. And they go after, they're going to go after this Harry person. Which has actually made him sad because that's a friend of his. Now, how a bounty killer is friend with somebody that would be on the, death list is something we find out later. So, in the meantime, we see Mary Death getting her car all fixed up. She's fixing her car, and these two geek-looking guys show up, basically having been instructed by a man named Van Sterling, who I believe is played by Gary Busey. He wants her to join them. And if she doesn't join them, they are to take her out, which is really funny. So they come and they find her, and they're talking to her about, we'd like to offer you a job, join us, And she's like, man, you have corporate suit written all over you, and shit gets ugly fast. And she kills them very, very nasty. Now, this movie is gory as fuck. Okay? Mad Max, nothing on the gore that's in this movie. This is a very, very gory movie. Like during that scene, one of the guys, he gets this chain claw thing right down the middle of his face. It was very, very gory. This movie is. If you like gore, this is full of it. So she kills them, and then she takes off. She then finds out, because right after Drifter had left the cash out place, she finds out that Drifter himself has a very high warrant bounty on his head. The little wanted poster comes out the printing machine, and so we're like, what? Now he doesn't know it, but she knows it. So she ends up coming after him, she's going to go after him. So Drifter and Jack, they arrive at Harry's, and they go in and they find Harry's burnt up corpse. And Drifter almost knows immediately this was a setup. Whoever is setting me up, they knew I would come to find out why Harry was on the list. Well, Mary Death, she arrives at the same time. She goes in, and they end up sort of starting to have a fight, but they don't. And he's like, are you stupid? Don't you know that this has got to be a setup? So they are a setup. It was a setup. It was Van Sterling and that group. So they attack, and there are some absolutely phenomenal action kills, bloody, gory, horrid action kills in that scene, that it was a setup for both of them. Because, see, if she hadn't joined back then, they knew she would go after Drifter, who had went after Harry. They had all meet up, and Van Sterling's group could kill them both at the same time. So she wants to, he has come up with, she lets him know about his own bounty. And he's like, yeah, I knew something was up with this trap. So she's like, I want to go with you, because he's going to go to the Council of Nine to find out what, why, who, where, when, why am I wanted? What's going on? Now, he's like, no, you can't go. You can't go. Well, you don't tell Mary Death what to do. So she ends up like beating the fuck out of him. And it's a fight between Van Sterling's group and Drifter, Van Sterling's group and her and Drifter. They're all fucking fighting because she's pissed off because you don't tell Mary Death no about anything. Mary Death is going to do what Mary Death wants to do. So they end up having a fight. Jack had messed up her car, so even when all of the people are dead, she starts taking off after them, and there's this really cool across the wasteland fight between them while she's shooting at them, and he's like, oh my god, she's going to get up to her, I'm going to have to kill this bitch. And Jack is like, no, I took care of things, wait till she turns that booster on to catch up with us. It does, throws her out, car blows up, they keep going, and she's pissed. Now, they don't get very far. Van Sterling shows up at Harry's and learns that Mary Death and Drifter are going to the council because some of his half-dead people tell them what they heard from them. So you see Van Sterling contact someone named Katrin, and so that's who he's obviously working with to kill Drifter and Mary Death. So Drifter and Jack have to cross the wasteland and avoid the gypsies, a big giant wasteland gang called the Gypsies. They have to avoid them to get to the council. I mean, you are talking about the entire United States here. So they don't make it. Drifter and Jack are captured and tortured by Mocha Sujata, who is the leader of the Gypsies. She only seems to be concerned with one thing, though, and that is, where is Nuri? Nuri is some gypsy girl that killed her king years ago, and she believes that it has something to do with Drifter, and Drifter knows who this Nuri is, and she wants to know where he's at. Well, they beat the hell out of him, torture him, but she doesn't get her answers, so they just go back to partying, where Drifter comes up with the idea that we'll just let them all get drunk and pass out, and then we'll escape, which is exactly what they do. During this time, though, he delves, because Jack, of course, is asking him, what is all of this shit about this Nuri person? Who is that? And that's where we learn that Nuri is actually Mary Death. So Mary Death was a gypsy. We get to see the flashbacks where they met, where she dressed up like a gypsy, found him, told him that she wanted him to train her. She had killed the king to get away and wanted him to train her, which he did, and turned her into the tied for the #1 bounty killer in the world, right? So he trained her very well. And Jack and Drifter escape the camp, and we see another huge, long Road Warrior themed road fight, because, once they take off with the big camper van thing, the rest of them wake up, come after them, so you have that infamous infamous desert automobile fight chase like you see in The Road Warrior and the thing it's most famous for. So we get to see that, and that too has some absolutely gory kills. One that will stay in my mind forever is where the guy, he manages to get in the camper with Jack, who's freaking out because Drifter is up there. Now you have to remember that this camper is being driven by two stationary motorbikes that are like, he can control with wires. It's cool. It's sort of like a horse-drawn carriage, except it's a big camper being drawn by two giant Harleys. So that's pretty funny to see. But one of the gypsies manages to get into the camper where Jack's at, and he's up against the back wall. And just right before he kills Jack, someone threw a gigantic battle axe at the camper, and it comes through the wall and cuts this gypsy's head in half, like from here up, and it like parts and slides off. That was disturbing. That's all I'm saying. That was disturbing. So we have that. We see Mary Death showing up at the Thirsty Beaver, where we see her old friend who runs the Thirsty Beaver. And that's Beverly D'Angelo, if you know who that is. So she helps her get cleaned up, gives her a ride, which is this really cool tri-bike, and Mary, of course, takes off after them. So Lucille gives her the backstory on Drifter. Now, this is something Mary Death didn't know, and neither did we. It turns out that Drifter was exactly one of those corporate executives. He was a multi-millionaire corporate executive. When the revolution came, he refused to take part in it. So he's a good guy, and he wasn't going to go against the people. So when this war started, him and his company started interfering with it, and he left and was chased out, and that's how he became a bounty killer against the very class of people that he used to be a part of. Now, this upsets Mary Death, as you can imagine, because to find out that he was one of that upper class. So, let me see. Let me get caught up here. All right, so now they have to go across a specific area. After the wasteland, there's a place called the Badlands, which is like irradiated and causes hallucinations. It's very bad to go through it. And Drifter goes to his friend Jimbo, who is really cool. I really like Jimbo. I've seen him in quite a few movies. I like him. Can't think of his name, but you'd recognize him when you saw him. He's a good character actor who's been in a lot of movies. But he helps them go across the Badlands because Drifter had brought him a 6-pack of Pabst Blue Ribbon, which is like one of the last in the world, right? So he's very happy with the Pabst Blue Ribbon. and that's how he agrees to take them across the Badland. Meantime, Mary Death is trying to achieve the same thing. She ends up stopping at a map maker, but she doesn't have the money to buy a map through the Badlands, and she already tried to get through it on her own, and she was lost and hallucinating and all kind of shit. That's a funny scene because she's finally fixing to leave without a map because she doesn't have any money. When then the guy's like, wait a second. He recognized her and told her to come back. And he picked up a bunch of magazine photos and stuff of her. Because like I said, bounty killers are celebrities. So he takes out a bunch of pictures and magazine covers and stuff and has her autograph them. And for that, he gives her the maps. And so that's how she gets through. So they all get through, and they end up at the Council of Nine, only to find the Council of Nine, the building is like wrecked. The guards and everything are dead everywhere. And the whole Council of Nine are dead at the conference table. So they've all been assassinated. So Mary comes in. They almost start to fight again. And he's like, something bigger is going on. She, of course, beats his ass for having lied to her about being an exec. And he apologizes and explains what all happened. It's at this time, though, that all four of them, Jimbo, Jack, Mary Death, and Drifter, they're all captured by Second Son. And Catherine shows up and with Van Sterling. And she comes up with an idea that, we're going to kill you three. And I'm going to take Drifter with me. And we're going to blame you all for destroying the council. And then they'll turn to us to take over again. Her company, her corporation. So, about that time, though, a little bump in the road happens. And that is the entire Gypsy army attacks at that moment. They've been following them the whole time. And during this, Mary faces off with Mocha, which is a showdown from hell. And she actually ends up killing the Gypsy Queen, but passes out. And Catherine had kidnapped Drifter and took him off in a heli, in a copter. So when Mary Death wakes up, Jack is there with her, and and she's like, "What the fuck happened?" And she's all freaking out, and he's like, "Calm down, calm down." And she's, he tells her that Catherine and them had taken Jack, kidnapped him. So she's like, "What are we going to do?" She's freaking out about what are they going to do. And Jack is like, "We're going to go get him." She's like, "Who? Me and you?" Really? Are you fucked? And then he's like, "I think you don't realize something. You're a gypsy. And you killed the Gypsy Queen." And then he takes her outside, and the entire Gypsy army is out there. And they stand up and bow to her, and he's like, "You're the queen now. There's our army." Okay. So they all take off now to go and rescue Drifter. Now, when Drifter wakes up, he's tied to a chair behind a desk, soundproof, in a soundproof office. And Catherine comes in and explains to him, turns out they used to be married. So Catherine explains to him that he is going to be the new face. I mean, he's a celebrity with the people. So he's going to be the new face of the new corporation that's the good corporation that's going to bring the world back, And he's like, "No, I'm really not." And she's like, "Yeah, you really are." "And this is your office. I'm going to pull the strings, but you're going to be the executive of this corporation. And we are going to announce it, and we're going to have the people on our side, and we're going to take control again." Now, while this is going on, remember, he's sitting at the desk. She's got her back to the glass window, and it's soundproof. He's listening to her bullshit, and he stops arguing. He stops arguing and just is like sitting there listening to her tell her plans. because he sees the gypsies and Mary Death and Jimbo and Jack out there. He sees them devastating. Catherine can't hear a thing behind her, while you're seeing the entire office staff being destroyed and murdered by the gypsies out there. When they're all dead, of course, Mary Death kicks open the door, and Catherine is like, what the fuck? And turns around and sees this giant war going on behind her, and Mary Death like knocks her the fuck out, gets Drifter free, and they start fighting their way out. So you have this huge, long, think The Raid, that movie The Raid, think that kind of battle. We have this huge battle. The kills are phenomenal. And when they, right about the time that they think that they've won, Catherine shoots Mary Death. And you're not sure whether she lived or not, but let me tell you, Drifter turns around with this gun, blows that bitch, and she goes like sliding 30 feet. That was an impact. And she ends up like sliding right under this big corporate logo, metal corporate logo, which he shoots, and it falls on her and cuts her in half. And they show all of this. So like I said, this movie is full of, I put Drifter kills her awesome. He does. That is a really cool kill scene. It turns out when he then goes to check on Mary, that Mary Death had like a steel bra under her bustier. That, what did I say her name was? Lucille at the Thirsty Beaver had given her. So that had actually saved her from the shot that Catherine had shot her. And then we see all four of them in a garage. They are fixing up Mary Death's new ride, which is a beautiful car. And a beautiful painting of her all over it. And she tricks Drifter upstairs into letting him tie her up. Into letting her tie him up. At which point she beats the shit out of him and stabs him and takes off to get revenge on Second Son. And he comes out like, you stabbed me deep again. What the fuck? And I guess they're going to have to now, he's going to have to heal up before he follows her, because Mary Death is the queen, right? The queen of death. So she has once again taken off to go take revenge. And I would have loved to have had a sequel showing what happened afterwards, but that's the end of that movie. And Jack and Jimbo and Drifter will have to follow to join in the fun. Now, like I said, this is probably the best Mad Max clone. This is probably the best Mad Max clone that I have ever seen in my love of these kinds of movies. You've got like I said, whichever side of the fence you're on, you've got a fantastic crush to crush on, a hero to crush on. The action is beyond cool. The choreography is tremendous. The production values on this movie are great. The acting is flawless. Lots of one-liners, funny sarcasm. Drifter has a really cool British accent. So it's like absolutely a phenomenal movie. If you're into this genre of films. Action, wasteland, post-apocalyptic, dystopic, tongue-in-cheek, Quentin Tarantino type action movies. So yeah, that is Bounty Killer. I did have this on DVD. So I was very, very glad when I was able to upgrade it to the DVD Blu-ray combo. And I gave my DVD to the neighbors, I believe. That's who I gave it to. They got like an 18-year-old autistic kid who likes to collect movies, and I gave his parents like a whole giant box of my replacements. So yeah, pass on the love, man. And Bounty Killers is love. And I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you. Bye-bye. Thank you very much if you took the time to watch. If you want to take the time to tell me what you think of this movie, do you have it? Have you seen it? Would you like to see it now? You really should. Prepare for some serious action, a great cast, a lot of laughs, and a lot of, ooh, my God, I can't believe they showed that gore. So yeah, Bounty Killer 2013, and I will see you in the next one. Love you, miss you, bye. Always remember it, never forget. You are a very, very, very special person. At least I think so. And I really matter. Bye-bye.